if payroll is big enough, then there's no reason why it can't sort of stand on its own 2 feet and sort of fight with the other departments, especially when HR and finance are often seen as back office sort of function, just sort of red tape, they're just overheads, etc. But whereas you're operating a bureau are bringing in the money, they're bringing in revenue. And so you can actually sort of work out how much revenue per head your team are actually sort of bringing in. I still firmly believe payroll is a people business, and you need people, sort of seasoned, sort of experienced professionals, as well as encouraging the next level of talent sort of through to really show that there is a career and long-term prospects sort of within payroll. 99% of people probably fall into payroll. I was probably one of the few 1% that actually decided to make the jump from HR to payroll.
Here's a pre-show scenario for you. Imagine you had to visit 6 houses just to cook your dinner. One place has the pots and pans, one has the stove, another has the food. You get the idea. Sounds ridiculous, right? Well, the reality is most global businesses operate the same way, using 6 different tools just to pay their global workforce. But now there's one platform offering truly simple, truly global payroll. And that's today's sponsor. That's Deel. That's Deel. With in-house customer success managers, local payroll experts, dedicated points of contact, and more, Deel eliminates third-party handovers and provides unmatched compliance and flexibility. In fact, they'll even help you track and flag the latest changes in payroll regulations before they even become an issue. So are you ready to transform your global payroll system? If you are, click the link in the show notes below to book a demo with Deel today. That's Deel. Hello and welcome back to the Payroll Podcast. I'm your host. My name is Nick Day. I'm CEO at JGA Recruitment Group. We are global payroll specialist recruiters. And today we have a fantastic guest who has navigated both HR and payroll leadership at quite an impressive scale. Our guest today, of course, for those familiar, is Adam Flight, Director of Payroll and HR at Moore Kingston Smith, where he leads a team of over 50 payroll professionals, an operation which I think you'll agree is much larger than the typical kind of payroll leadership guests I've had on the show. Not everybody, but it's certainly quite a big team. He's also recently, or should I say, he's also had an incredibly successful and unique career journey, starting in HR before transitioning into payroll. I highlight that because often it goes the other way around. And now he oversees both HR and payroll operations in a leadership capacity. He's also one of the founding members of the Association of Bureau Managers and is playing a key role in shaping best practices, not just for payroll, but for payroll bureaus across the UK as well. Now, I'm hoping in today's episode, we're going to be exploring a little bit more about Adam's journey through both HR and payroll, the challenges and the opportunities that he's been presented with and that he's taken, and some of the things he's had to overcome in managing such a large team as well as his insights into the future of payroll leadership and innovation. So whether you're an aspiring payroll professional or a seasoned leader listening to this show right now, hopefully it's going to be packed with lots of insights that you won't want to miss. But a little bit of housekeeping for all you listeners. Remember, if you're joining me today for this audio or you're watching us on video on YouTube, please do subscribe to the channel. Please remember to leave us a review if you can, like it, but most importantly, please share this episode with just one other payroll colleague, because it's together will really help raise the profile of payroll worldwide. And if you do that, I will be incredibly grateful. Right, without further ado, welcome Adam Flight to the Payroll Podcast. How are you doing, sir?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Nick. Good to be here.
Good to have you here. Of course, we were chatting just about a week ago, which brought us to here. So let's continue this conversation on a podcast. We've got too much to talk about. Before we dive into that, though, I'm going to ask you my standard question, something I ask all my guests, which is this: what does the word payroll mean to you?
Complex compliance. I think I'm not a technical payroller. I know enough to sort of give some advice, but never ask me to sort of calculate anything. And I know that we've got sort of other questions as we go along regarding the future of payroll and sort of AI and bits and pieces. But I still firmly believe payroll is a people business, and you need people, sort of seasoned, sort of experienced professionals, as well as encouraging the next level of talent sort of through to really show that there is a career and long-term prospects sort of within payroll. 99% of people probably fall into payroll. I was probably one of the few 1% that actually decided to make the jump from sort of HR to payroll. But yeah, that's where I believe it is at the moment. It's just complex and lots of compliance going on.
Absolutely right. We're going to dive into that in just a moment for sure, and find out a little bit more about how your career journey in particular started. I love the idea that, I would say 99% of the guests I have always say they fell into payroll. So it's nice to have one of the one percenters on the show. However, I'm still of the volition where I want to encourage people to come away from that fell into. Like, there's always a choice somewhere in your career journey where you actually made that decision to go, you know what? This is for me. I don't believe in this falling from the sky into a profession. I'm in recruitment. I never set out to be a recruiter when I was at university studying theatre and performance of all things. But I absolutely made the choice to stay in recruitment once I found my industry. And I don't know, it's still, I think we need to take some ownership back of payroll. So I'm glad we've got one of the percenters here that is, absolutely owning that choice. So let's dive into that for a minute then. From your perspective, you started, if I understand it correctly, in the world of HR, but as you eloquently just mentioned, you made the decision to come into payroll. Tell us a bit more about your journey.
So I started in payroll, back in the early, in HR back in the early 2000s, working across sort of various industries, starting in hospitality, working at the Tower Hotel, educational publishing, magazine, media publishing, working for IPC Media, which is now a Time Warner sort of company, stockbroking, manufacturing, and then it was a long-term friend and recruiter friend of mine who approached me about HR consultancy position at the then Kingston Smith before it became Moore Kingston Smith. And I went, I don't know, consultancy's very, very different from in-house. And she's like, honestly, you've got it. So 11 years ago, came in, interviewed, started sort of at the bottom, sort of the rung within consultancy. And then after 4 years had moved my way up, and then just remember my boss at the time coming out and saying, the firm's recruiting for a director of payroll. I think you'd be fantastic sort of at it. And that was on a Thursday. And on the Monday, I asked him, can we have a conversation? He's like, you're not resigning, are you? And I'm like, no, but I want to put my name in the hat for the role. I had never managed more than two direct reports before. As I said, not a technical payroller, but just fancied a bit of a career change. But at the same time, having the security of length of service going, it was initially a 12-month sort of role to say, if it doesn't work out, I can go back to HR. If the firm decides I'm not working out, they can throw me back into sort of HR. But here I am nearly 7 years later. Team back then back in 2018 was a team of 13. And it's now grown to a team of 40, plus the 10 HR consultancy team that I also sort of look after. So a lot of that growth has been through a couple of acquisitions in the last 12 months.
Sure.
It's sort of onwards and upwards. It's certainly sort of looking, for me, it's a potential huge area of growth. And as you know, Nick, I have a lot of sort of friends within the payroll industry in sort of other bureaus, other accountancy firms that others would sort of almost say, well, they're competitors. The size of the UK payroll market is so big. We're all in this together, and sort of there is more than enough work to sort of go around. So I always like to encourage sort of collaboration, sharing ideas and stuff to ensure that we're all sort of on the same page and hopefully heading in the same direction.
Yeah, I love that. I have to agree. I think most people, if they work in payroll, they have a lot of friends in payroll. I think that's just the way it kind of works. It's the nature of the community. I mean, I've been on stag do's and I've had people weddings. I've cycled across Europe with a couple of payroll colleagues. So fantastic industry for that kind of collaborative support for sure. So what I love about your story, there were two things that I picked up on. One is, so you didn't just come into payroll as a choice. You came in at director level. That's pretty rare. So you must have really proven yourself on the HR side. But now you find yourself almost 360. You've now got the HR consultant still feeding in. So you've gone back to your roots a little bit, albeit through the payroll journey. So which must be quite an interesting development for you.
Yeah, it is. And the firm has brought together over the last sort of 2 years a number of different sort of service lines under an employer services sort of heading that includes the likes of sort of employment tax, HR, some sort of employee benefits and bits and pieces. And so sort of when my predecessor left HR consultancy sort of team at the back end of last year, I thought, well, I may have a little bit of capacity. I'm always looking to be a bit busier, even though people do think I'm a bit crazy nuts. And so sort of said, look, if you don't want to sort of look and recruit someone externally, I'd be more than sort of honoured to look after and take on the HR consultancy team as I'd caretakes for sort of about 2 years ago, sort of when a couple of directors had left previously. And the firm said, you know what, why not sort of give it a go. I've got a really strong management team within the payroll side of things, and realistically, they look after the day-to-day stuff. So it's not like it was sort of 5 or 6 years ago where the management structure was a lot leaner and it would have fallen a lot more sort of responsibility. But just looking operationally after those sort of two departments now, it's something I can feel sort of I can look after and cope with. But it's taken sort of 6-7 years of growing the team, changing the structure, putting in the right levels of management in order for me to be able to sort of have the time to do that.
Well, I like that when it comes to HR, I like the term when it comes to HR professionals of calling them cultural architects. You were talking about building, right? HR help build the culture of a company, and they help architect it through recruitment, through talent, through organizational development, and other things. We talk about a lot about my other show, the HR L&D podcast. So it's a rare thing for me to have someone who's got experience in both fields on the show. And a couple of things I wanted to pick up on, both from your first response and the one you just mentioned. I always let the first bit go, which I shouldn't have done because it was a recruitment comment, and it sounds like, obviously not myself, but you had a really good experience with a recruiter that put you on that initial path by recognizing you had potential to go out of in-house into a consulting environment, into an accounting practice, which again is a challenge in itself sometimes. So really good to hear a positive story there. What I'm really interested about though, when you're talking then, now that you're managing both, is something I often hear in payroll circles, and have been hearing for a long, long time, is that payroll as an industry often feels underappreciated in comparative terms to finance or HR. So as someone who has both those hats on, I don't know if you've ever been exposed to that feeling of underappreciation, because it also appears to me that your firm is actually one of the rare firms, if you like, that really seems to value payroll and HR and really giving you all the resources and encouragement and promotional opportunities and budgets and all these things to really help you grow in that role and grow your team and all the other things, which is a beautiful thing, because we don't hear enough of those good news stories in the world of payroll. So
No, that's right. And I think I'm just lucky in having the backing and support of the firm sort of that I do. The fact that I sit on a board with the head of tax, with the chief finance operations officer, another partner, as well as sort of other directors sort of within the firm. The fact that we have a seat at the table that listen to and are interested in the growth plans of both HR and payroll. I have complete departmental budgetary control, headcount, where things are sort of growing. And I think the firm realizes, in a lot of accountancy firms, and I think that's where a lot of my counterparts have started to sort of be at director level. You've got a number of them that are now partners within accountancy firms, and they're not sort of chartered accountants. And I think probably the last 5 years, I sort of think of myself as being under a bit of a lucky star in being at the right place at the right time, when all of a sudden accountancy firms start realizing the value of sort of payroll. And by doing that, being given the resources and the opportunity to grow it, not just headcount wise, but sort of revenue wise, sort of as well for the firm. And who knows where the next sort of 3 to 5 years are going to lead us on from here.
Well, I'm probably going to ask you that question in a bit, so hold that thought. I'll see if you can predict it. So one thing I do want to ask you, though, because you mentioned you do sit on the board with head of tax and others, it's a constant theme in the world of payroll where people are trying to get their seat at the table. And I know it's come a bit of a cliche, but when cliches exist for a reason, there's usually something in them. And you obviously have that viewpoint. You have those optics of being sat at an executive table and be able to make those decisions. Where do you sit on, what side of the fence do you sit on as to whether or not payroll as an industry should or should not, or does it really depend on size of organization? How imperative is it that we keep pushing the narrative that payroll people need a seat at the table?
Yeah, I think it does depend on the organisation and the size of the team and department, because a lot of it is a case of there are three options. Does it sit within finance? Does it sit within HR? Or does it sort of stand out sort of on its own? I would probably say, if given the choice between finance and HR, it should definitely sit within sort of the HR side of things, because finance, as long as they get their reports and they know the costings and everything else, realistically, that's it. But HR should be the central point of all information and knowledge and everything else that then feeds into sort of payroll. And without a really good relationship between payroll and HR teams, you're then going to have sort of issues with sort of data, sort of reconciliation and everything else sort of on that side of things. But if payroll is big enough, then there's no reason why it can't sort of stand on its own 2 feet and sort of fight with the other departments, especially when HR and finance are often seen as a back office sort of function, just sort of red tape, they're just overheads, etc., etc. But whereas you're operating a bureau are bringing in the money, they're bringing in revenue, and so you can actually sort of work out how much revenue per head your team are actually sort of bringing in. Like, in the sort of good position of also having a HR consultancy team that effectively outsource HR in the same way that we outsource payroll. So again, they are revenue generating sort of heads as well.
Is that a differentiator then, do you think? I think if there's a revenue generation element to your role, and of course there is for a lot of certainly payroll bureau managers, but also people working in management consulting firms, the big four, things like that. I can understand there being a stronger case for an executive seat on the basis that you have not just a payroll compliance and legislative and accuracy and things sort of elements of your role, but you've also got that revenue generating business development angle as well, which is not everyone has exposure to that in payroll.
No, but it's also a case of you deal with so many sort of different clients, and sort of we as a firm probably only look after 25-30% of MKS's client base. Of potential client base.
Yeah.
And so it's really trying to convey that message as to how payroll can add value to existing clients and bring in more revenue. Why should it just sit within audit? Why should a client just sit within tax? Actually, they probably need HR, they probably need payroll. And everything at the end of the day is for the good of the firm. And I'm not going to turn around and provide a really rubbish payroll service to a client and then potentially the client leaves the firm completely.
Sure.
Actually, what sometimes happens, I wouldn't say that we have a reputation for losing clients because of service, but when it comes up for retender or there's governance issues where they need to change sort of providers for audit and everything else, actually 8 to 9 times out of 10, they stay with payroll because people just hate changing payroll providers. And if it's not broken, then why sort of try fixing it and moving it sort of somewhere else?
No, that makes sense. So on that, if it's not broke, why do we try and fix it? It becomes an interesting question, which is, we mentioned AI and other things coming in. There's a lot of people who go, well, I don't really know why I need to bring AI, for example, into our operation, why I need to embrace even automation to a certain degree. I've got a bit of legacy software here. It pays the people accurately and on time every single month, week, or hour, whatever it is you pay or frequency might be. So why do I need to upskill? Why do I need to stay ahead of these new innovations, these disruptive technologies, when I ultimately am able to manage the key aspect of my job, which is pay people accurately, on plan, and on time? So if I do that at you, what would you say?
Typically, payroll has always been seen to be 5 or 10 years behind pretty much any other sort of department or sort of sector with regards to sort of innovation, change, and everything else. And I'd probably say in the last 10 years, just since I've been sort of at MKS, that has completely been sort of spun on its head. The move from sort of application desktop-based sort of systems to the cloud, to, like you mentioned, sort of automation, whether that's already built in or like us, we brought in a third party to sort of automate certain process of the payroll. But also you've got to think that as a recruiter know that there is a finite amount of payrollers sort of out there and good payrollers that can sort of run it. And unless
For sure.
you're investing a lot of money in bringing through younger talent through the apprenticeship schemes or any sort of internal traineeships, you need to try and work smarter. And so the way that we've done it is to say, right, we want to grow by another sort of 50, 100% in the next sort of 3 to 5 years. How are we going to do that? But try and keep costs down. But also we know that I've got a team of 40 at the moment. Does that mean that I need a team of 60 or a team of 70? Where are those people going to come from? Actually, using the efficiencies of automation, AI is a slightly different sort of kettle of fish. And hopefully within the next month or so, I'll be posting something to sort of say sort of AI beware in the world of sort of payroll, because at the moment, the modeling and the algorithms aren't quite there to give you the results that you would need. But for me, it's creating capacity within the team, getting rid of some of the really low level, sort of repetitive sort of data entry sort of stuff, so that the team remain engaged. They're doing something a bit more interesting, but you're then creating capacity. So I could go out and win another 100, 200 clients tomorrow and not go, well, actually, I need an extra 2 or 3 team members to sort of resource that sort of increase in clients. And so it's just working sort of smarter, not harder, so that you can keep everyone sort of fully focused, engaged. You're giving them new skills, which I know that training and development within payroll at times has been sort of lacking. But I know that, again, in the last 5 years, that really has, 5 to 10 years, that really has changed. And it's just giving people a different focus, something to, let's look at the advisory piece. Don't worry about the sort of manual data entry stuff. We can get sort of robots to do that, or sort of AI to a certain extent. Let's actually focus on client delivery and sort of dealing with queries and providing a better first-class service to clients than what they may have come to expect in the past.
Yeah, I love that response. It shows as well, you're coming at it from a strategic viewpoint of, actually, that's not, what got us here won't necessarily get us there. And in your view, like you're looking at growth, and what you've done so far is great to getting to the point you're at right now. But actually, in order to grow and double in size in a short time frame, you're going to have to think slightly differently and think a little bit broader and a little bit more strategically in order to achieve those goals. I think for me, you kind of highlighted all 3 points that I would consider as being the 3 sort of pillars, if you like, to performance and growth. And one of those is, you can obviously, if you're going to expand and grow and drive more performance, you can recruit more talent. That's what we do very well at JJ Recruitment. You can find talent and top talent, things like that. But if you can't do that for whatever reason, you can optimize your technology and you can invest in your technology so you can work smarter, faster, more accurately, whatever. Or you can train and develop the staff. And I think you kind of highlighted all those 3 pillars. You can either make your teams work more effectively and therefore get more productive and more performance out of them that way. So it sounds like you're right on the money for those kind of 3 elements. You've got quite an exciting road ahead. I think what I find quite interesting as well in a previous response is, you said in your view, payroll should definitely be sat within HR and not finance. I actually agree with you, by the way. I think in the UK, we kind of view it more that way. But I think in the US, it's still much more payroll is based in finance as opposed to HR. And I think there's a shift there that probably doesn't happen in quite the way it's happened over here. And usually we're behind the US. I think maybe it's slightly reversed in this particular instance. The reason I think it should be based in HR, and you've highlighted many of these points already, is certainly post-pandemic, it's a lot more now involved in the employee experience than ever was before. And I think before we went into the pandemic, and before in the UK, payroll professionals were considered key workers. We got UK paid, and it really sort of thrust payroll into the limelight. It probably was more based in finance because it wasn't as entrenched in the employee experience element of what we see now. And of course, the Great Resignation that followed, which was great for recruiters like me, but you saw a lot of movement, a lot of shift. Payroll people were moving, HR people were moving because they wanted better conditions, more flexibility in the way that they were paid, got own wage access, things like that coming into the fore, hybrid work-life balance, the opening of global borders, where you can now recruit from anywhere in the world effectively. I think that's changed everything. And I think there's so much talent left businesses that there was a huge cost for organizations to have to carry that burden, but also a huge cost to try and get new talent in. That's meant that, we can't go through that again. We need to make sure we can retain our staff. And now I think more than ever before, payroll has a huge role to play, pivotal role to play in helping employees to both attract and retain top talent. And I think that's really, so I'm not talking about payroll talent, I'm talking about the broader talent of the full employee base. And I think that's really exciting. And that's why for me now, maybe I would have said a different answer 3-4 years ago, but now for me, absolutely needs to be sat within HR, and needs to be working with HR to get that, those mechanics working effectively to make sure that we're looking at the right metrics, looking at the data, as you mentioned, which HR often holds, to understand the trends, analyze it, and go, right, this is what's really working for our employees. Have you found something similar?
Hello, global payroll leaders. Are you facing challenges in finding the right payroll talent for your team? If you are, I hear you, and I'm here to offer you a solution. Because at JGA Payroll Recruitment, we're experts at sourcing, attracting, and engaging with top-tier global payroll talent that really drives business success. So don't let the frustration of finding great payroll professionals hold you back from raising the profile of payroll in your organization. The cost of a poor hire isn't just financial. It costs you time, or worse, it damages the reputation of your payroll operation. That's why we're 100% dedicated to ensuring your recruitment journey with us is nothing short of exceptional. Partner with us at JGA because we're an award-winning global payroll recruitment agency with a proven track record of success. We have over 100 5-star Google reviews, and we're trusted by many of the world's leading brands. And we would love to help you elevate your team with the best payroll talent available anywhere in the world. Reach out to us today at 01727 800 or 377 or visit us at jjrecruitment.com. And while you're at it, why not sign up to our weekly payroll newsletter for exclusive industry insights and job opportunities? With us, your perfect payroll opportunity or your perfect payroll hire awaits.
Yeah, it's also about the integrations. You've got to look at the employee experience, but you've got to, the new phrase that comes up is, what is the total reward package? And you're looking at employee benefits and how do you integrate HR with the employee benefits you're offering that then feed into sort of payroll. In 2026, everyone will be payrolling the benefits and not submitting P11Ds and stuff. So again, it's that real close link with HR that look after the employees, their contracts, their benefits, their pensions, their private medical and everything else, that all feeds into sort of payroll. And that's why I think a lot of people, the last thing you want is to get anyone's sort of payroll sort of wrong, but it is all about what that employee experience is. And they shouldn't see any issues or anything else. It should just work seamlessly sort of in the background. And by pulling all of those areas together, that's what makes the employee experience sort of so attractive when you're looking to recruit sort of people, by saying, this is exactly what we do, how we work. And yeah, people can just come in and get on and do the job that they do without having to worry about all of that other stuff. And is my pay definitely going to be right this month, knowing that I've changed up to my pension percentage or something like that? Do you know what I mean? So it needs to work seamlessly together to really make sure that sort of you do attract and retain that really key talent.
That's why we come to work, right? Get paid. We want to make sure it's
Definitely.
right. That's the number one policy is, I don't want to do all that work over the course of a week and get paid incorrectly. So as someone that has both hats on, and if there was, for HR and for payroll, if there was a payroll leader listening to this who's actually, you know what, I'm inspired by what Adam's got to say. I want to build a better collaborative working relationship with my HR counterpart. I'm not quite sure how I go about it. I'm not quite sure what value I can bring or what questions I should ask. What are the kind of things you would recommend? Because you see it from both sides. You're already, you collaborate with yourself effectively because you're holding both hats. What are the kind of conversations they could be having with their HR colleagues?
I think it's understanding what the pain points are. And it's the same way when we deal with sort of clients. What are your pain points when it comes to either extracting HR data, putting it into a format that then needs to go into sort of a payroll system that really could be streamlined? And it could be really, really simple changes. Why? Just because someone hasn't thought to change a process because they think it's key and it just works, and they may spend 2 or 3 hours making that process work, or actually tweaking something to just change the format or the way that something's delivered, could actually save a whole sort of heap of time. I know that at the moment within our internal sort of payroll for sort of MKS, we're working with Power BI, and we've had a technology team internally that's put together a report that's taken them 2 days to write. And that will actually give live variance data as soon as the monthly payroll report has been done, ready for the partner or sort of finance manager to review and approve. Whereas before, that took a day and a half's worth of someone's time just to pull that variance report together. So it's just through having those conversations with people to understand, right, how does your system work? How can we work better together to sort of streamline stuff? Is it that, do you have electronically sort of fillable new starter forms, for instance, that can easily be converted into one Excel form with all your 10 or 20 starters on that can be imported in? It's just having those questions and really trying to understand what the other person does and needs to do to get the information to you in payroll, where actually you as the payroll expert can turn around and go, well, why do you do it that way? And why don't you do this? And why don't you do that? And then see whether the systems are fit for purpose, or whether something sort of can be changed using other external expertise to make life that much easier.
There's the old adage, isn't there, of time costs money. And I think this is where, if you can save time, either in the HR process or whatever it might be that you're using the data to help make more productive, effective choices, you're going to be saving your company money. And this is all sort of leaning into making payroll more strategic, looking at payroll as a profit center rather than just a cost center, and all the things that come with it as well, which I think is quite interesting. Now, of course, you are one of the founding members of the Bureau Association as well. Now, not everyone listening to this will necessarily understand the nuances in difference between working in-house and working in Bureau, but tell me a little bit about your role with the association and what you're trying to achieve.
Yeah, so originally it was the Payroll Bureau Association, which was founded sort of 2 weeks before the pandemic. And because of the pandemic, it sort of struggled. But through that association alone and through just people connecting and being willing to share stuff, I remember one member of someone's team came up with the almost perfect furlough calculator as a spreadsheet. They shared that amongst the members and everything else, and it was literally drag and drop information in, and it was to the nearest 1 or 2 pence.
Not the same one we had on our website, was it? Because we had about 2,000 downloads on ours. It was created by a Bureau manager, and they've been the same one.
Quite possibly. But the fact that it was as accurate to be within 1 or 2 pence of sort of HMRC's sort of calculator was just incredible. And now with Barry looking at the Association of Bureau Managers, it's just there are so many things that sort of annoy payrollers, sort of are bugbears and everything else. And everyone is just so willing to sort of be open and share their views and sort of work together to try and make the industry better. Bureau is so different to in-house. In-house, it's very steady. You have your deadlines. Yes, you probably have your tricky managers that don't submit overtime and data on time. But imagine being in-house and then dealing with 30 or 40 sort of different sort of payrolls with different industries, different pay component types. Just the level of chaos and complexity that the bureau industry sort of operates at isn't for everyone. And we've learned from that. We've taken on a couple of people in the past from in-house who have dealt with multi-sites within sort of their in-house stuff, thinking, all right, they've dealt with multi-sites, so be similar. 3 to 6 months, they realize it really isn't for them. So it very much is sort of chalk and cheese. You either love bureau or you love in-house. It's very hard to find someone that has successfully made that transition. And those that have probably have been more open to change and challenge and been willing to sort of stick things out because they just prefer the variety of dealing with bureau.
You need a level of resilience, I think, in bureau. I think people that come, I think in my experience working as a recruiter, and obviously we've transitioned people away from in-house into bureau and vice versa. It's moving into that partner environment where you haven't just got kind of one CEO, you've almost got 20 or 30 different partners. They're all your bosses. Yeah. They all have priorities which are more important than the next, and you've got to manage those. They're all like little sort of bosses on their own right, and you've got to manage all the different expectations. That's on one side, it's in-house, and externally, of course, you've got another 50 or 250 or 1,000 managers, which of course are the clients that you also got to look after. And of course, their payroll is always the most important thing. So there's a lot of relationship management in bureau payroll, and a lot of that managing priorities, being resilient when something goes wrong, because it's not just an employee if it goes wrong. Often it's the whole client payroll operation and their employees, which they've given you the responsibility to manage. So it is different. But I think on the flip side, where there's greater challenge, often there's greater reward. Yep. It's that journey piece where the yin and the yang, you think, okay, well, it is tough, but when we get it right, we are really high and we absolutely love what we do. And I know for those that have been in bureau for a long time tend to stay in bureau. I think often that's the reason why. Have you found something similar?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've got a member of our team that this summer will come up to 30 years service. Wow. Working sort of through a number of acquisitions and stuff, working sort of with us. And yeah, I'm sure she would sort of turn around and go, oh, I've been working in payroll, et cetera, but actually, well, you must love the job you do because you're still here sort of 30 years to the on. And it probably is that variety compared to sort of being in-house where it could become a little bit stale, could become a little bit samey. Yes, you may be looking after the same 20 or 30 clients, but your contacts within those 20, 30 clients are likely to change as the churn of staff and retention sort of changes. But we try to sort of mix things up wherever possible so that when people are looking to sort of swap out and go, you know what, I'm not worried about sort of giving that one away and looking to take on sort of something new, something bigger, a bit more complex or anything else. And just having that flexibility to sort of really chop and change sort of people's workloads based on their needs and requirements is a really, really nice thing to do.
So I want to come back to the question. Well, I think you said, who knows where it'll go in 5 to 7 years' time. That's what I want to ask you in just a minute. So I'll hold that thought while I ask you this. Before I get there, though, I wonder if there's any, I don't know, top tips maybe, or key bits of information or insight you can share with our listeners who may be interested in, maybe they've got to as far as they feel they can go in the glass ceiling of payroll or payroll issue, and they think, actually, I don't want to lose that expertise, but I would like to transition a little bit more into HR, maybe get a little bit more experience in either reward HR or something similar. What kind of advice can you give to help them start to make that transition, or to help them gain more responsibility, when the obvious argument is, well, I've never done HR, so I'm never going to get a chance. Of course, you never done payroll, but you walked into a payroll director role. So it is possible. And if you ask the right questions and show enough initiative, enough willing, it can happen. But what advice would you give?
I think it's easier going from HR into payroll than payroll into HR. I mean, HR professionals know to get on the bottom rung within HR. I remember coming out of college and university going, right, how do I get my first HR job? Because all entry-level HR jobs require HR experience. And you go, well, hold on a second, where do I go to get that sort of 6 to 12 months experience? But I did recruitment for 6 months and then sort of got in sort of via that route. I think payroll, knowing that there is some crossover when it comes to probably the reward side of things, when you're looking at gender pay gap reporting, whether you're looking at salary benchmarking and total reward packages and stuff. If you have an interest in that, that's probably the easier of the areas of HR to get into, rather than sort of generalist or sort of learning and development or recruitment side of things, resourcing. But at the same time, it may not just be sort of HR. If you're a payroll manager, managing a team, managing a budget and everything else, there are probably other operational management roles that you could sort of move into, that you just don't realize that you actually have the skill set, the people management skills, the financial acumen and everything else, and go, actually, it doesn't matter whether I'm running necessarily a sales team, a finance team, etc., etc. If you're willing to sort of take that leap of faith and you do want to sort of make that change, then there's nothing worse than sort of looking back in 5 years' time and going, oh, I wish I'd gone for that role, and you're still stuck with the same headaches and haven't progressed sort of much further. And I would like to think that that's the leap of faith I took sort of 7 years ago when I moved from HR consultancy into, like you say, a massive step up sort of into a director role, but also going from 2 direct reports to 13, that's then sort of grown, sort of tripled in size over the last sort of six years. It's, unless you're willing to push yourself and get out of your comfort zone, nothing will necessarily change. You've just got to be brave enough to take that sort of first step.
Absolutely right. Now, you obviously had a cat in the bag there. You used to work in recruitment as well. So how was that transition? You actually know what it's like on this side of the fence.
No,
it's not like people think, is it?
I was working in nursing recruitment. So
okay, well, locums, very different again.
Dealing with bank nurses, managing about 4 different hospitals across the UK. Very, very sort of different, on call, sort of one weekend in 4, getting calls from hospitals at 1 o'clock in the morning saying, oh, your bank nurse has gone back to the bed and breakfast and have taken the drugstore keys, and trying to contact someone or whatever. So it was, I think if I'd started somewhere like JGA or one of the sort of top recruiters, sort of national recruiters, I don't think I probably would be here today. But that was the only way that I could see to sort of start getting to the HR side of things, by just having a bit of recruitment experience that then got me into sort of hospitality, looking after sort of HR and payroll there, before then going into HR.
I mean, a lot of people do start in recruitment before they find themselves in internal recruitment, then HR. It's a natural stepping stone if you want to go into that profession, so that makes sense. But yeah, I did get my ears warmed up when I heard you mention that. So last question then, before we go into the future of payroll, which is, you said you started by managing a team of 2 before you got your payroll director role, if I remember correctly. That's obviously grown through acquisition, which brings its own challenges as well. For those that haven't got M&A experience, it's be quite challenging from a payroll perspective. You've now got a team of 40 payroll, 10 in HR. What's that like? Managing a team of 50, it's double the size of my business. So, and I know that probably comes with double the number of challenges, shall we say, in a nice sense of the word, as well as the tough element of it. For those listening that perhaps haven't experienced team sizes like that, what are the major shifts? How has it been for you to learn your own way, and what kind of advice would you give to those that might help?
I think it's the old adage: treat people the way that you want to be treated. If you want your manager to be have an open door policy, to be able to go to, whether it be with a work related problem or personal related problem, look at it on the flip side. As a manager, sort of just treat people with respect. They are all adults, and I give trust implicitly, sort of no matter sort of who it is. And it's really until that trust has been broken that then sort of relationships sort of can sort of suffer. I know I'm not the perfect people manager. I'm sure that if you sort of surveyed my team, they would say that there are certain shortcomings that I have, but I would like to think that changing a team that had a staff turnover of 30-40% sort of per annum to less than 5%, where I've only had sort of 2 or 3 resignations in the last sort of 2 or 3 years, I must be doing something right. I don't know what. And it does come down to sort of personality. I couldn't wave a magic wand and say, right, in order to be successful in this role, you've got to have X, Y, Z. I think if I was to speak to my boss, he'd probably be able to sort of list some things. But I just like to give everyone exactly the same amount of time, build close working relationships with people, understand sort of what makes them tick. And like I say, sort of building a really solid sort of management team sort of under myself, so that the team feel that they are being supported by their direct line manager and supervisor, all the way up, and that they can escalate things sort of as and when needed. And I think for me, sort of sitting on the fence between both HR and payroll, it means that a lot of people do get those sort of grey payroll/HR related questions that they can come to me and say, oh, I don't know how to sort of deal with this settlement agreement, or I've come up with a maternity query that sort of is probably more HR than payroll. So for me, being able to add value, and the team know that I'm not a technical payroller, but over the last 6-7 years, I probably know a lot more about payroll and probably pensions that I would probably wish to. But it just instills confidence, and having that sort of openness and transparency with the team, they know exactly where they sit. And there's no sort of hidden agendas sort of anywhere at the end of the day.
Amazing. Fantastic. Well, it sounds like you've adjusted seamlessly. The old adage you mentioned at the start, it makes sense. People actually like to be treated. One of my mantras I say to myself and to others is just be more kind. Everyone is going through something, right? And it's just like we probably are ourselves. Everyone else is going through something. So just take a moment to be more kind. That might be why they've reacted the way they have, or why they need an arm on the shoulder, or they need a little bit more attention.
And I think it's almost leaving status at the door. Don't look down at people. Don't look at sort of where they sit within the organization. I treat sort of my head of payroll to the supervisor to sort of payroll associate in exactly the same way, give them exactly the same time if they need to sort of have that call and stuff. And just knowing that sort of no matter who needs help, they can come to me, sort of no matter what it's about. I think sort of instills sort of some form of confidence, that they know they're going to be supported no matter what they're going through.
Yeah, for sure. I think your longevity in your current role, your progression probably speaks volumes for how well that's gone for you. So congratulations. It looks like it's been fully deserved. Right, now one role, which is, of course, going to come back to that question. What is the payroll industry going to look like then in 5 to 7 years' time? Because we've got a lot of innovations in payroll technology. We've got AI that's not just threatening, it's absolutely going to change the landscape of payroll. It's going to be driving a lot of change in the industry over the next 3, 5, 7 years. So what role does AI and automation play in the modern payroll management? Where do you see it moving to? Take this wherever you want to go. Take any duration and time. I'm just keen to get your view in the future.
I think the future is automation and AI. That's without a doubt. It's certainly not there yet. But if we look at where AI has come from in the last 2.5 years since the first ChatGPT sort of got released, it's an exponential growth, and improvement, and that's only going to add to things sort of in payroll. And I think there'll be a huge shift sort of in payroll from it being a transactional sort of team and department to allowing AI and automation to sort of get on and do the transactional bits and pieces. But it's then going to focus on what can we add to give to clients. Is it the integrations with HRIS systems, with finance systems? Is it sort of the reporting and sort of instant access to statistics on their workforce and sort of everything else? And I think The payrolling and benefits that comes in just over a year's time will only sort of add to that. Coming back to the total reward statements, everyone will be able to know exactly what their tax position is and what their sort of employee benefits look like, sort of live. But also, it's just going to be technology. Technology in the last sort of 2 or 3 years has continued to develop at an amazingly fast rate. In the next sort of year or two, we will be looking to change sort of payroll softwares. And for us, it's all going to be about which ones are going to try and stay ahead of the curve, but also sort of offer us those connectors to other teams and departments. So we can go, doesn't matter what HR system you use, what finance system you use, our payroll system can plonk down in the middle, connect everything up, and sort of just make everyone's life that much easier, so that it is going to be sort of at the tip of your fingertips, reporting information. And 10 years ago, I think you and I probably heard a lot about data scientists and things that were sort of particularly coming out of sort of India, sort of an out east. I would probably think that with AI and data being sort of two key things, it wouldn't surprise me if things sort of go down that route and we really see sort of those data scientists that at the time we thought were going to be groundbreaking. I haven't heard much of over the last sort of 5 or 6 years, but it wouldn't surprise me if sort of software developers, data scientists, all of that start really sort of rising to the fore, and then payroll software teams or houses will start investing in those things, so that they can really sort of add a few sort of supercharged turbos to their payroll software, so that it really, really does enhance both the bureau's experience, but as well as the client experience.
Yeah, I'd take it a level further. I think it's not just the software providers. In my humble opinion, I think in-house departments are going to start taking on payroll data engineers, payroll data scientists. Specifically, they're not going to want them to be shared. They're going to want them within their function, working day to day, really getting to grips with the data and how it can work smarter. I think that's just around the corner.
Yeah, and like I mentioned earlier, with our technology team looking at sort of Power BI and pulling information sort of
Great
out
example.
in real time, we are looking at sort of how AI can be used in other sort of areas and applications and stuff, and automation, reading sort of individual tax returns and completing sort of self-assessment forms. All of that stuff is just going to get done in the background, but it's what we can then provide and advice, guidance and support to clients on how they
just look at things with a different lens, right? So they'll come in and they'll create this Power BI report for you, or a solution, an automotive solution, and you'll go, wow, that's added so much value. It saved me so much time. So if they've just achieved that, you're not going to want them to let them go. You're going to go, right, now I've got this project. Now, before you know, it becomes a full-time role. I think that's what will happen.
Oh, massively so.
People will bring them in probably on contracts to begin with and go, right, here's my data. There's a lot of it. What can you do with it? These are my processes. This is where we're having inefficiencies, where we have obstacles, or whatever it is. Can you just take a look at it and give me some solutions? Let's have an ideation session and work out what we can do. They're going to come up with solutions that we've never even thought about, not with a payroll lens, but with their lens of looking at data and go, well, why don't you do it this way? We could create a report, this dashboard, whatever. And suddenly they're going, do that, build that. Then they're going to go, well, actually, now you've done that, can you do this? And I just think before long, these will be full-time permanent members of staff.
But it's also a case of people don't know what the possibilities are out there.
Absolutely.
I mean, giving a shout out to sort of FD Intelligence, who helped us with our robotic stuff. They came down and said, right, well, let's start with your processes, and then looking at the workflows and everything else. And then they were able to help identify where automation would really, really sort of save a lot of time, a lot of aggro and everything else with regards to that sort of standard, repetitive sort of process, procedure, task, whatever the team sort of does. And sometimes you do need to, whether they are data or technology project specialists or whatever else, they could probably set up their own consultancies, drop into a business and go, right, this is how we can improve processes, procedures, etc. And then people go, right, okay, will help us with this project whilst we recruit some people sort of in, and they'll probably sort of be asking, top talent will be asking sort of high values for their time and money, but the amount of time and money it could potentially save is going to be sort of huge.
Yeah, absolutely right. It's an investment worth making. And of course, if you want to recruit these people, I know a really good agency, JJ can certainly help. We're certainly in the process of trying to build a network of AI specialists that have some kind of payroll understanding or payroll background to be able to do those things. How quickly they become adopted, of course, by organizations that want to take that level of investment, we'll wait and see. But certainly we're giving ourselves up, just like payroll departments are. We have to be forward thinking as well, and trying to see where do we think the payroll industry is going to move in order so that we can cater for those talent requirements when they come back. So it'll be interesting to see how it unfolds for sure. But Adam, it's been a fascinating journey. Let's open the payroll vault. 3 short, sharp questions for you. The first of which is this: what's one piece of advice you'd give to payroll professionals looking to grow into a leadership role?
Do as many soft skills training courses to build your people management side of things. I don't think any company or firm truly sort of invests in people to promote them. They promote them up because they're technically competent and expect them to do a good job because they don't want to lose highly skilled people. But actually, it's the people management side of things. So really, really spend time in sort of learning some psychology, some mindset, some people management side of things, I think is key and critical.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And actually, I don't know when this is going to go out, but hopefully a press release from our side goes out beforehand. But we've just joined forces with Coaching Focus to deliver ILM level leadership qualifications for payroll professionals. So this is not compliance or legislation. Move that to the experts in the payroll field. But for pure leadership,
sign up, everyone.
And people management. Have a look at our website. You'll see a partnership with Coaching Focus, and we're delivering some of those courses now on a day-to-day basis, or actual ILM level qualifications as well. So that may be useful. Question number 2: if you could change one thing about payroll today with one action or improvement, what would that action or improvement be?
I think and I'd like to think that there is something sort of on the horizon coming, but my biggest headache is a third-party management tool that can manage the payroll process, clients, and everything else. Because a lot of softwares have some things built in, but I know most bureaus and teams manage their client portfolios still on spreadsheets with multiple columns going into sort of double letters, because that's how long they are. But something where you can customize and build your own workflow and checklist, where you can reassign clients. You know that if someone's off sick, you assign half clients to one person. I think something like that would be sort of a game changer, sort of within the payroll industry.
Fantastic. And last but by no means least, if payroll was a theme song or a movie or even a book, I'll let you choose. What would it be and why?
Oh my goodness. Let me have a think. Honestly, don't know now. Now you put me on the spot. Probably. Oh, my mind's gone completely blank on films and music. Something like The Eye of the Tiger.
Okay. Yeah.
From the Rocky films, knowing that every day you've got to get up, you've got to grind hard. Sort of in payroll, you're gonna hit some obstacles. You're gonna hit some sort of heavy hitting clients that are gonna hit back, and they're gonna sort of knock you to the floor. But it's all about getting back up and fighting for what you believe in, and then knowing that when you become that champion Rocky Balboa, sort of at the end of the day, that you've actually got your role smashed and all of your clients in line doing exactly what you want. That's probably the closest thing I can think of.
Fantastic. You need a bit of bounce back ability in payroll, like one of those concrete steps.
Resilience in bucket loads.
There you go. Well, listen, Adam, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the show today. I think we've learned a lot about why Payroll and HR needs to be so deeply connected, certainly in the current world, why leaders like yourself can actually lean into things we haven't done. If you want to get more exposure, you can lead in HR, you can lead in reward, you can do other things. But all those things together really help us navigate and drive strategic change, which you've done tremendously well. You've got a huge team, which you're managing fantastically well as well. So it's been a real pleasure having you here. I think it's clear to see that the future of payroll is evolving. It is going to be involving AI and automation and real-time processing, and is going to involve a greater strategic alignment with HR and finance as well, by the sounds of things. So really exciting insights. Thank you ever so much for joining me today on the Payroll Podcast. Of course, for those that want to connect with Adam, I will put his LinkedIn profile in the show notes, so click straight through. I will also put a link through to Moore Kingston Smith's page as well. If you want to find out more about their bureau services, you can do that as well. And if you did enjoy listening to today's discussion, once more, please do remember to subscribe, leave us a review, share it, like it, but most importantly, if you can, please share it with just one other payroll person. Just say, hey, if you listened to this Payroll Podcast before, check it out. This is where we can really help bring the leaders that are shaping the industry of tomorrow people like Adam, so they can really get to understand the profession, help them with their career journeys, and hopefully together we can really raise that profile of payroll as well. So Adam Flight, thank you ever so much. It's been an
Thanks very much,
absolute
Nick.
pleasure.
This episode is sponsored by Deel. That's Deel. Deel is your forever people platform built to simplify your entire global payroll process. Deel's fully managed global payroll makes it possible to pay your entire team in over 100 countries and in over 200 currencies, all in one place. So whether you're an enterprise business, a small company, or something in between, Deel is built to meet your unique business needs. So if you're ready to transform your global payroll system, click the link in the show notes to book a demo with Deel today. That's Deel.